Hey everyone, welcome to the RotoGrinders NASCAR preview and recap show this weekend. We're heading to Auto Club Speedway, and you might know it as Fontana if you haven't been around recently. But we're going to first, as always, recap last weekend's race, Pennzoil 400, presented by Jiffy Lube at Las Vegas. If you're new, if you have never watched the preview show before, each week I will go back and I'll look at the winning tournament lineups on Fanduel and DraftKings and the two big tournaments. I'll review my cash lineup for DraftKings and Fanduel, kind of walk you through the process that I was looking at, when I was selecting my cash lineup. So each week we're going to do those things. I'm going to give you my good and bad from the previous race, kind of just, my general takeaways, general strategy talk, and I'll let you guys ask questions. If you haven't already, you can head on over to the RotoGrinders YouTube page and the chat is up there. Or if you're a RotoGrinders premium member, you can head on over to the NASCAR Discord channel and you can ask questions there. Kind of bouncing ideas off of some guys and gals throughout the day. So a couple of different ways to watch, and we're going to jump into it here and get started talking about last weekend's race. Like I said, I'm gonna start with my cash lineups over there. So let's start with FanDuel. My cash lineup on FanDuel this past weekend was Kevin Harvick, Erik Jones, Alex Bowman, Aric Amirola, and Kurt Busch. Terrible. I got smoked in cash games on FanDuel this past weekend. Luckily, I had some really good tournament lineups on FanDuel to keep me afloat, but it was a losing weekend over there for me. Kevin Harvick, obviously, was really, really strong on short runs. I really liked him. I thought the race was going to be really good for him, and he got the laps led. He ran up front most of the day. He was really strong fantasy play on both sites. Where I went wrong in cash and where I went wrong just in the week in general was Erik Jones. I was very high on Erik Jones. I played a lot of Erik Jones in cash games and in tournaments, and they just had zero speed throughout the day. I will say he got a little unlucky on that last restart. He lost a few spots there. Alex Bowman had to pit really late, and he lost some spots. So, I don't even think it would have been a good day. I'm not sitting here trying to make excuses, but, I missed the cash line in some, double ups by less than 10 points. Would have been really close to maybe breaking even had that not happened. Aric Amirola was very popular just in general on both sites in cash and in tournaments. He was really strong in practice. The track type was really strong for him, but I did not expect him to be as popular as he was. I did think he was going to be popular. I just didn't expect it to be as much as he really was. And then I finished off my cash lineup with Kurt Busch. Most of the time on FanDuel, I'll go balanced for cash lineups. I don't necessarily I don't typically play like a Ty Dillon or some of those cheaper guys. So I don't think that you necessarily have to, play a cheaper guy. I think on FanDuel with the pricing the way it is, you can kind of just go balanced and it's not going to really kill you. So, yeah, I don't really regret any of my cash lineup. Like I said, I know that I know that Erik Jones didn't have a lot of speed, but I don't think that I would necessarily switch him out. His price was fantastic on FanDuel. He was 9,600. He was under 10K, so I really liked him for cash. Heading on over there to the Intimidator, 100K $6 buy-in tournament. Congratulations to A Owens 09, premium subscriber here at RotoGrinders. Reached out to us. Awesome to see, a premium subscriber take down the FanDuel tournament here. Austin Dillon, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Matt Dibenedetto, Joey Logano, and Kevin Harvick. Obviously, when you're looking at this line-up, ran really, really good here at the end of the race. some of these guys stayed out on old tires, and it really paid off for them towards the end of the race. Joey Logano, he stayed out on old tires, which was huge for him. Obviously, winning the race. Like I don't feel like there was portions of the race that we talked about Logano, but like there was a good portion of the race too where Joey kind of disappeared. So I feel like him picking up the win was a great strategy call by Paul Wolf. I talked about this on the breakdown show. I was really interested to see how Logano was going to work with Paul Wolf. Paul Wolf was Keselowski's crew chief for the last few years. Very good strategic crew chief, and a lot more guys stayed out than I thought they would. Austin Dillon finishing fourth was a huge, huge thing for him. 10% owned. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He was a core cash play for me this week. Really liked him starting 26th. Did not expect him to lead as many laps as he did. Some strategy put him out front, and he was able to lead some laps. So that was really good for him. And good for that team to kind of finish top three here. Matt Dibenedetto, I really thought Matt Dibenedetto was going to win this thing at the end. He ended up finishing second. He said after the race they made a really good adjustments throughout the race. And obviously you could kind of see it. And he was getting better throughout the race. And, at the end he was there, finished second. Joey Logano, like I said, he was strong at portions of the race. He's always really strong. Penske's always really strong in Vegas in general. And then Kevin Harvick, who was 50% owned in this tournament. A lot of people played him as their top end play, and he definitely didn't disappoint. I was kind of hoping he would finish better. I think a lot of people were kind of hoping that he was going to finish better. But I think nobody is really complaining about 66 fantasy points from him over there on FanDuel. So, for me, when I was looking at this winning team over there on FanDuel and comparing it to like my ownership, I didn't play a ton of Austin on FanDuel. Talked about him, ranked him pretty decently. His projection was fine. I just, I didn't end up. I thought Austin was like a 15th place car, so I didn't go like crazy on him. With 10% ownership, obviously that was a really nice spot for A. Owens here. And Ricky, I liked him. My ownership on Ricky was a little bit over the field. Matt Dibenedetto, my ownership was over the field. Joe Logano, I was right below the field on FanDuel. Kevin Harvick, I was below the field, but he was like one of my highest owned drivers. I didn't play 50% over there on FanDuel. So, for the most part on FanDuel, I think that it was a really strong lineup, and I don't really have anything to kind of dig into too much. I will say, like, Jimmy Johnson, 25% owned, was the difference maker for this lineup. Jimmy Johnson, the guy that finished second, had Jimmy. The guy that won had Austin Dillon. Same lineups, just one driver off. So, when you're looking at it, it was a strong team, but one play, like Jimmy Johnson. And we see this on FanDuel a lot, on FanDuel, a lot of the times you're going to need those top five finishers to be, in the running there towards the end of the race. So winning teams on FanDuel, way different than the winning team you're about to see on DraftKings here. And, hear me talk about on DraftKings, the finishing positions on FanDuel, first, second, third, fourth, eighth, all those guys in the top 10. So that won't be the case when we go over here and start talking about FanDuel. So shifting gears to DraftKings, my cash lineup on DraftKings actually did really well. Kind of held up my FanDuel a little bit. I played Aric Amirola, Kevin Harvick, Jimmy Johnson, Erik Jones, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Daniel Suarez. Aric Amirola, again, very disappointing. Really expected more from him, but he was so popular in cash games that it didn't really kill you over there on DraftKings that he lost 7 spots. Kevin Harvick, 92 laps led, 31 fastest laps. Those dominator points on DraftKings add up really, really fast, and he was a really strong play. People debated. Saw a lot of different builds. I saw a lot of, Harvick Truex builds. I saw a lot of Truex builds. Harvick was really popular, 78% owned in the higher stakes double ups. Jimmy Johnson wasn't as high, but he was pretty high. Started 18th, finished 5th, was really strong throughout the day, picked up fastest laps. The Hendrick crew in general showed a lot of speed. So, obviously that's something that, we can kind of, it's going to be my feature in my takeaways here in a minute. But yeah, Jimmy Johnson, that whole Hendrick crew looked really good. Erik Jones, talked about him when we were talking about Fanduel. Just a really disappointing day. He ran in the mid-20s all day long. Just never really seemed to have it. They missed on the setup. The speed wasn't there for Erik Jones. And, it's a little concerning, but I'm not going to look into it too much. We move on to Auto Club here, and, we'll just kind of take it for what we're going to take it as, with the qualifying getting rained out. We really didn't have a lot of places to take stands either this past weekend. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. started 26th, finished 3rd. I like Stenhouse a lot for cash games. Like I said, he was a core cash play in my article this week. Him, Aric Amirola, and Harvick were my 3 core cash plays this week in the article. Daniel Suarez started 35th, finished 30th. Really didn't even start the race. Ended up, missing the first couple laps because of issues. Really thought he was going to, crush lineups. I talked about him a lot on the driver breakdown show. Just not the same equipment for him this year. And, just looking at it, Daniel Suarez was fine. He was safe. I really like Dillon as well. I wrote him up as a value play this week, and I really debated until about 15 minutes to lock if I was going to play Suarez or Dillon in cash. I'm glad it didn't kill me. Probably would have made a little bit more money if I played Ty because, he crushed. Looking over there on the DraftKings winning team, TJ Rella and John Hammond. Congratulations. I know John reached out and he's a subscriber here. So again, love to see, premium members take down these big DraftKings tournaments and FanDuel tournaments. The winning lineup: Matt Dibenedetto, Ty Dillon, Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, Ricky Stenhouse, and Bubba Wallace. Optimal. If you listen to the Morning Grind preview show last week, I told you guys that I thought the optimal was going to be 2 dominators on DraftKings, and that's what it ended up being. Harvick, Logano. Both of those guys put up 69 fantasy points. The highest scoring guy was Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He ended up scoring 71.5 fantasy points. He led 30 laps under strategy conditions. And, finished 3rd late in the race. Staying out was huge for him. Matt Benedetto, we talked about him on FanDuel. 17 place differential was huge. Bubba Wallace was the low-owned guy. 6% owned, gained 21 spots. He, again, really benefited from the end of that race and really took advantage of that late race restart. So Bubba wasn't there all day. Got there at the end, which was fantastic, for anybody that played him. I was a little bit overweight on him. I think I had like 11%. So Ty Dillon, like I said, he was my featured value play this week. Really liked Ty. Started 24th, finished 10th. Showed really good speed in practice. Showed really good speed at the beginning of the race. I was like, oh man, this speed that we saw in practice for him is super real. And then, he kind of fizzled out in the middle of that race and ended up being there at the end of the race. And, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. But he is one of those cars that I'm really going to be watching this year. And, I wrote this in the article this week that they brought back a lot of the same crew members, engineers, stuff like that. So Ty is one of those guys that I'm really going to be watching at the beginning of the season because I do think he can kind of be a difference maker, especially at his price point. So as far as strategy goes, I always like to recap strategy. The strategy this week was, 2 dominators. And, you could potentially play 1 dominator and kind of build around it. If Harvick, were to dominate like he did, but didn't dominate fully, he was going to be strong. But it ended up being a 2 dominator race with Harvick and Logano, both scoring over 20 fantasy points for dominator points. So it ended up being a 2 dominator race, focusing on that mid-tier, and kind of just, playing some of these cheaper guys like Bubba Wallace and Ty Dillon, Matt Dibenedetto, difference maker in that 7K range, Ricky Stenhouse, difference maker in that 7K range. So, I think the strategy this past week for Pennzoil 400 for Vegas was right on point, and just getting the right combos of those cheaper guys and not playing Daniel Suarez a lot in tournaments. The bad for me this week is Erik Jones, and it's kind of Erik Jones, it's Denny Hamlin, even Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch is always going to wiggle his way into the top 10, but Joe Gibbs in general, outside of Martin Truex Jr., just kind of missed this past weekend. They missed at Vegas bad, and I kind of expect a bounce back. But the thing is that it is very important here when we're looking at beginning of the season, this West Coast swing. These cars for these races are built so far in advance because of this West Coast swing that if they missed on something and they miss on something again this weekend, they might be slow again this weekend, and it might be a very interesting spot to take advantage of. So definitely going to be, focusing on Joe Gibbs cars in practice this week, really watching and seeing like if they have any single car speed, if they have speed in the draft, if they have the handling, because we have a 2-mile track this weekend with Auto Club. So I think it's important to, obviously pay attention to Toyota and Joe Gibbs in general, on Friday and Saturday this week to kind of get an idea, because if they miss on something, it could be a spot that we really take advantage of in cash games and in tournaments. The good this week has to be Hendrick Motorsports. Man, I was doing really well when Chase was up front. I was kind of overweight on him on FanDuel and DraftKings. It wasn't by design. Like, he wasn't like this like standout play to me, but like just the builds ended up being like I ended up on Chase a little bit more than I did like Keselowski, which I did not expect, like going into the race. But I will take advantage of it. Sometimes you just gotta trust projections and trust how lineups come together. Chase was phenomenal. Hendrick in general was phenomenal. Those cars were really, really fast. And, we have the new Camaro, new Chevy body this year. They're the only team that really made any off-season changes to the bodies. So I really think that we need to take advantage of it early here, assuming that they show some speed this weekend. Because if we can take advantage of it, before everybody jumps on, we can get those guys maybe a little bit lower ownership. So be interesting to see where the Hendrick group qualifies. Because I do like Byron, I like Bowman, I like Johnson. This is Jimmy's home track, last time for 7th time at Auto Club. So shout out to King Chief in Discord. He just posted right before the start of the show that fun fact, Jimmy Johnson has completed 100% of his laps in the Cup Series at Fontana, which is Auto Club. So totally jinxed Jimmy Johnson. So you guys can all get on him when Jimmy has an issue, but has completed all of his laps here. Even the takeaways, like my takeaways too, is really paying attention to the Toyotas heading into this weekend, and heading and just watching Hendrick in general. The Fords were strong. The Stewart-Haas, cars. Harvick was really good on short runs. Amirola had decent speed, but was like a 10th to 15th place car. Boyer wasn't great. Cole Custer was laps down. He really struggled. It would be interesting to kind of see how this is going to, strategy is going to kind of play out here for Stewart-Haas at this racetrack. So let's head into the preview part of the show. Previewing, we got Auto Club this weekend. It is a 2-mile D-shaped racetrack, large oval track, low bank track. It kind of comps to Michigan. The difference between like this place and Michigan, they're both like Penske built tracks, is the fact that like there's a lot more tire wear here at Auto Club. So they don't comp like great, but they comp decent. We don't really have another comp. I think you can kind of throw Atlanta in the mix because it's a large oval as well, and it has really high tire wear. So when like I'm looking at my data for this weekend, I'll kind of mix in, Michigan, and I'll mix in Atlanta, and I'll mix in Auto Club because we only run an Auto Club once a year. Stages this weekend are 60, 60, 80. The fuel mileage is 48 to 53 laps. It is a high tire wear track. Dominator points this weekend. We have 100 fastest laps points available on DraftKings and 50 laps led. So 150 Dominator points on Fanduel, 20 laps led points, and 20 laps completed points. Cautions over the last 10 races, we're averaging 6.1 per race for an average of 25.1 laps, which is taking away 12.5 of those DK Dominator points. Over the last 5 races, drivers that have scored more than 20 Dominator points in those races, 2-2-2-1-2. So 4 of the last 5 races has had 2 Dominators. 4 of the last 5 races has had 2 Dominators featured in the optimal lineup here. So there's a good chance heading into this weekend that we're looking at 2 Dominators for this race. Obviously, we'll kind of have to see how the weekend plays out as far as, practice and qualifying, but there's a good chance we're looking for 2 Dominators this weekend. And I will say, like, DraftKings pricing is a lot softer this weekend. I feel like we all got really excited that, pricing was really strong last week. And then like, oh man, like pricing's a little softer this week. I think we'll definitely see 2 Dominators because of just how soft pricing is in general here. So just kind of looking back here at this racetrack, like I said, I like to group Auto Club with Atlanta and Michigan. So looking at 2019, those 4 races combined, Kevin Harvick had an average finish of 4th. He was one of 3 drivers to have all top 10s in all 4 races. Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, the other drivers there. Kyle Busch averaged 34.3 laps and 26 fastest laps on those 3 races. He averaged the most DraftKings points and the most FanDuel points. So he's obviously a top contender for one of the top plays heading into the weekend. Martin Truex Jr., again, really strong at this type of racetrack. Second best or third best driver rating behind Kevin Harvick and Joey Logano. And really, really strong racetrack for him. Truex averaged the second most DraftKings points and the second most FanDuel points on those 4 races last season. Kind of looking for some value here. It'd be interesting to see what Suarez's speeds look like in practice because, like with Stewart-Haas last season, he was really good at these racetracks. So we'll kind of have to see how that plays out because his equipment is terrible. Kyle Larson is very good at Michigan, but it's never really translated to Auto Club. He's another California boy, so kind of have to see that. I will say, like, these types of racetracks were really bad for the Hendrick crew last year. Alex Bowman, average finish of 14th. William Byron, average finish of 14.5. Chase, 14.8. And Jimmy Johnson, 22.5. So if they're not showing a ton of speed in practice and like what we're looking at, just overall speed, single car speed with drafting, all that stuff that we're going to be looking at here in practice this weekend, I think that they could be an interesting team, a group that maybe people jump on really fast because of how fast they were. And it might be a really good spot to be underweight if they're not showing the speed because they were terrible at this type of track last year. So nothing else kind of standing out to me. If we look at the last 5 races at Auto Club, Brad Keselowski has a 3.8 average finish. The thing about his average finish is, he's at 4 top 5s. Joey Logano has 4 top 5s as well. But he's not, like, averaging a ton of fastest laps in that span. Like, Kyle Busch is averaging the most fastest laps here over the last 5 races. Truex second, Harvick third. Keselowski and Logano averaging about 10 fastest laps. The same with Kyle Larson and Kurt Busch. So, when we're looking at the last 5 races here, the average finish for Brad has been great, but like it hasn't been like he's been racking up the Dominator points. So, heading into the weekend, Brad looks like a much better play on like a Fanduel than he does on DraftKings, because he's averaging the most Fanduel points over the last 5 races here, but not the case on DraftKings. Martin Truex Jr. is actually averaging the most DraftKings points over the last 5 here. As far as cheap guys go, over the last 5 races here, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has been really strong. Ryan Preece did decent on this track last year. Ty, this was not a great track for Ty. This was not a great track for Buescher or Bubba Wallace either. So, value for us this weekend is really going to be paying attention to practice and maybe trying to find that lower owned play. Last thing here, we look at the last 10 races this year and last year combined to try to get, the best idea of what we're looking at. Denny Hamlin's actually averaging the most DraftKings points and the most FanDuel points over the last 10 races. And it's a lot to do with laps led and fastest laps. He was really strong to finish out the year. So I think that, Denny is a guy that we're definitely looking at here. 3 wins in the last 10 races. Kyle Busch has 2. No, Kyle Busch had 1. Sorry. I was reading my sheet wrong. Top 5s, Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin in those last 10 races, about 6 apiece there. Only one person has 9 top 10s, and that's Kevin Harvick. He's been really consistent here over the last 10 races. So just looking at the cars that have had a lot of speed, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, those Hendrick and the Penske cars have been kind of struggling. But I will say, just because his paint scheme is awesome, throwback to Kobe Bryant. Ryan Blaney, 3rd best average finish over the last 10 races. He started the season really bad last year and, started the season really bad, finished the season really good. So Ryan Blaney with his awesome paint scheme this weekend, certainly somebody to be watching here. As always, at the end of the show, I like to open it up to questions. So if you have any questions, like I said, YouTube, RotoGrinders YouTube page, I have chat pulled up for that. If you're on the RotoGrinders YouTube page, make sure you hit that like button for us. Subscribe to the RotoGrinders YouTube page, and you can hit that bell if you want any of the videos that come out right away. Also, I'm over there in the NASCAR Premium Discord, so if you have any questions, you can throw them up in there. We did have one of the questions here. What do I make of the Toyota seeming pretty slow across the board in Vegas? Any impacts on your thoughts going into the next few races? To be honest, outside of Martin Truex Jr., like I said, Joe Gibbs was really slow. It was really surprising to me just how slow they were. They definitely missed on something, like I was talking about at the beginning of the show. Just looking at it from last week's perspective alone, just to kind of, get an idea. Even the average running positions and stuff for these guys weren't strong at all. We look at fastest laps for Toyota, and William Byron had a lot of the fastest laps. He had the second most behind Chase Elliott. So again, Chevy was really strong, but Martin Truex Jr. had 18 fastest laps last weekend. Erik Jones had 1. Kyle Busch had 1. So not a ton. Denny Hamlin had 0. Denny, that car was bad. He was not happy all day with his race car. So am I concerned? Yes, I'm concerned. About the overall speed for Joe Gibbs and Toyota. I say Joe Gibbs, it's really Toyota just in general, because Christopher Bell is under a blanket with them, and Daniel Suarez's equipment, he's going to be slow. So yeah. Yeah. It's going to wrap it up for the preview show. We'll be on the RotoGrinders Grinders Live and YouTube page each and every week this year. Again, this is a free show this year. It's kind of replacing the pit stop video. The pit stop video is really hard to do in the beginning of the week before qualifying. And with the qualifying the way that it is this year, we just had a lot of races where we really weren't going to be able to, talk about anything until like Saturday night. So some of the races, even race day. So this is kind of be like our free RotoGrinders NASCAR stuff this year. So appreciate you guys watching. And we'll be back next week. It might be on Tuesday or Thursday next week because we have a special show next Wednesday. So we're still kind of working out the details for that. But appreciate you guys watching. Again, make sure you subscribe to the RotoGrinders YouTube page. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Discord. That's it. We'll see you guys next week.